Welcome to Babblecom 5. This is episode 7 of season 3 of Babylon 5, Exogenesis. It's Transport Dyson, piloted by Sean Connery, or someone doing a fine impersonation of him anyway. Apparently someone is finally here. Elsewhere, David Corwin is now a fully fledged lieutenant, as attested to by the barkeep in Earhart's. And Marcus hasn't been invited to the party. Naughty Ivanova. Elsewhere, the hangar onlookers watch as a decidedly alien parasite embeds itself into a random bloke's back, then vanishes itself and his wounds. Wrath of Khan, anyone? Unfortunately, it seems this merging didn't go to plan, as the original two are joined by another who says they can't afford to be captured as the man screams of alerted security. Not clear if the mergee is dead or alive at this point, but he's definitely out of it. Sheridan takes Ivanova to one side and asks her how to assess Corwin now he's a full lieutenant, because he's going to end up getting caught up in their circle in some way and they need to know where he stands. Ivanova notes she is not a fan of being put in these sorts of positions, but will have a word with him. Marcus's friend Duncan seems to have a nasty cough, but they have a very jovial relationship. He pays him little for one of his trinkets to help keep him going. Franklin is going through routine assignments with his team when one mentions the DOA from the cargo bay. Cause of death is unclear, so Franklin will assist in the post-mortem. It seems Marcus has a mini ranger network going on. He's told that Ranger 1 has ordered rangers out of Earth space by his courier. Shadow vessels are forming a boundary on the edge of Centauri space in Sector 800, and the package he's expecting from Mars has left, expected in a week. He asks the courier to drop a scanner in the sector and get out fast. He's missing his usual contact, Samuel, who seems to have decided he has other things to do. The man from the hangar watches Marcus leave. Franklin performs the post-mortem. The man had lived in Down Below since June 2258. Whilst he was a user of a few illicit substances, dust amongst them, none of their volumes suggest that they're the cause of death. He notes that he has fingernail marks in the palms of his hands, suggesting he was clenching his fists hard before he died, so stress could have been a factor in his death. The MedLab scanner detects an anomaly in his nervous system, some fibrous tissues around his spinal column that shouldn't be there. Franklin will proceed to open him up to investigate. Marcus is doing his own investigation and finds Samuel with the humans from the hangar waiting with others. He responds to Marcus, but rather distantly. Marcus doesn't like it and wonders what's gotten into him. Well, quite. Franklin is just finding out as we see Duncan has taken on one of the creatures. Franklin is examining the small portion he's removed, and it's genetically neutral, meaning it can survive in any other organism. He wants to figure out if the deceased came onto the station with it, or if he got infected afterwards, in which case they have a problem. Ivanova is about to pounce on Corwin, bless him. It goes about as well as you might imagine. Marcus has established Duncan has vanished along with the other strange behaviours, but Mr. Garibaldi isn't overly sympathetic as no crime has been committed. He suggests perhaps Marcus needs a doctor, and Marcus asks if he can quote him, before going to see Franklin and persuading him to give him an hour. Corwin, God love him, is going gift shopping, having completely misconstrued, or possibly not, he's very confused, Ivanova's invitation to have an illicit coffee in her quarters. Artificial roses, 40 credits. Nice. On the hunt for Duncan, Marcus intimates he might be ill, persuading Franklin to use the medical override on the door to his quarters. His quarters are empty and dark, but they have a new exit, covered with something similar to cobwebs. They find someone in the midst of their implantation cycle, but are held at gunpoint before they can link in for backup. Franklin thinks the whole station could be getting taken over, but Marcus notes that all of the people are lurkers, people looking for meaning. No one in a strategic role. Franklin notes, until now, perhaps. Ah, bless. David bottles it predictably, but at least Ivanova likes the roses, even if she thinks he just randomly found them lying outside her room. Duncan has come to find Marcus, and he is healthy and alert, and part of Indreezy. Somewhat Trill-like, a blended personality, it seems. Not nasty as such, but very determined to achieve their goal, whatever that is, and they need help to avoid the problem that happened with Franklin's DOA. Ivanova soon realises that Corwin is not going to be an ally. He's Earth-forced to the core, and he's unlikely to accept making his own decisions about what's right and wrong. He'll follow the chain of command, because that's what he's been trained to do, and he'd report any problems he saw. She thanks him for coming as he tries to swig down the last of the real naughty coffee that she's not supposed to be able to grow in the station. Marcus discusses Ivanova with Franklin, noting that she's been a bit cold with him since their original meeting when she seemed warmer. Franklin says originally he just seemed to be passing through, now he's resident and she needs time to accept him. Franklin laughs, incarcerated by alien parasites with guns at their head, and Marcus is considering making a play for her. Can you think of a better time? He asks, just before Franklin is removed to assist one of the new implantees who seems to be dying. Marcus is using his advanced math skills to whittle his jailers down to 0 by cunning use of making his Minbari fighting bag out to be a medical scanner. Less cunning is his attempt to use Franklin's link, which it turns out is biogenetically coded for Stephen and objects to being used by anyone else. However, the attempt to use it does alert Ivanova, who alerts Garibaldi, to head to Brown 84. So all's well that ends well. At least up to a point. Marcus gets into the area where Stephen is being held and frees him, but they finally understand that what the Vindrizi are trying to achieve. But Marcus cannot accept what Duncan is saying, fearing the symbiote is influencing him. So Duncan cries out as his symbiote leaves him, to reassure Marcus that what he has said is honest and true. The Vindrizi are living libraries, recording the sights, sounds, smells, feelings of the galaxy against a time when books and other sources are ashes, so that they might help those remaining. They are the past, the present, and the future. They only inhabit those who wish to help, who have nothing else to live for, because as long-lived as they are, they need their hosts. So an agreement is reached. Franklin will ensure volunteers are truly that, and check them before merging. But there is no helping poor Duncan. He cannot rejoin another Vindrizi, it would be too much for him. But he wanted his life to have meaning. Tragically, he knows that all the wondrous things he has seen will have faded from his memory by the next day. In C&C, Ivanova gives a silent shake of the head to Sheridan's unspoken question about Corwin. Duncan is leaving the station to Marcus's regret. He wants to try and see with his own eyes some of what he recalls from the joining to be special once more. He thinks we should all strive to be special. Franklin confirms to Ivanova and Garibaldi that the Vindrizi were on the level and keep themselves secret, so their knowledge can't be eliminated because information is power. Garibaldi asks Franklin how Marcus was, and he says he was cool under pressure and would appreciate another chance with Ivanova, which she of course thinks meant that he was the one who left her the roses, allegedly, and she storms off, dumps them on the counter Marcus is eating at, and says, "Keep 'em," to which he responds, "Thank you, I will." Never straightforward, is it? Now, for some reason, I came to this episode and I went, meh. Maybe it was the Vindrizi as creatures, I'm not sure. Maybe I didn't quite manage to record the whole thing first time round. Watching it now, I actually think it's not too bad, and it does represent far more screen time for Marcus than we've ever had to date, and his creating a relationship with Franklin, and of course definitely not creating one with Ivanova. At all. He's a quirky, cheeky chap, but also clearly a very caring soul. We also get an insight, which I'd not noticed first time round, into how he's managing the affairs of the local rangers. He's clearly got some degree of autonomy locally that we weren't aware of prior to this, I don't think. Of course, none of this really gives us huge insight into the overall hierarchy of the rangers, but it suggests there is one, and the use of a courier is quite old school, but it does mean that short of physically intercepting him, your comms are going to be secure from technological interference. Plus it seems Marcus has mail heading his way, which is a little detail I'd not noticed before. We see the pike in its distinctive sound effect in action again. Funny how he tells the Vindrizi to look into the hollow ends so it smacks him in the face when it expands. The dialogue he gets is terrific fun and touching in equal measures. And I think the British element of the audience would actually get it more than the American element in some respects. It's almost Python-esque humour at times. Nice addition to the cast this late in the run. And we have poor old Corwin the confused, not sure whether he's being seduced or subpoenaed at the end of the day. Just hilarious how the roses get recycled in this malformed love triangle by the end of the episode, but more seriously, telling that Marcus may be more trustworthy for them than someone on the command deck. So the Vindrizi are a twist in the tale because the first guy's reaction suggests something nasty is happening, as is his eventual death, of course. Whilst they clearly do have a degree of desperation about them, they also have a greater purpose in mind, as Ivanova was asking Corwin, it's a question for them of the ends justifying the means to a large degree. They're only ever acting in self-defence rather than using violence to obtain hosts as such. And realistically, you can see why. They are a massive hidden cache of knowledge that could be tapped for all the wrong reasons. I actually wonder whether Franklin actually recorded what ultimately happened with them, or whether he went off book. I don't think that's quite made clear. There's quite a lot of noise associated with their activities after all. Not entirely clear on how they managed to bust through bulkheads either. Just reading that back to myself, I'm reminded of the techno mages, of course, who were also heading out to avoid their knowledge falling into the wrong hands as well, and you do wonder whether or not the Mendrazi are similarly motivated here. Just thinking about Ivanova's coffee, and I can't recall if the first officer in the Gathering pilot also had a few secret coffee plants. Maybe that's something they had in common that hadn't come to me before, actually. On a techie note, when Sheridan had his link stolen, he chased the guy down, but according to this episode, there was literally nothing that could be done with it by someone else, unless perhaps someone suitably skilled could hack into it in some way. I'm also not sure if you've seen a transport like the Dyson before, with what looked to be thrusters bolted on amidships, possibly for vertical landings in high G worlds. Hard to say, but reminded me of a Space 1999 Eagle variant, especially with its landing legs extended as it came onto its pad. Again, not sure we've seen that before. So, all in all, this isn't one of those super critical episodes in arc terms, but there are a few nuggets around and about. I think the main value flows from the more expansive introduction to Marcus and his interactions with the command crew. Now, the DVD episodes menu has revealed the next episode to me, and it is a corker. For the uncertain, that means it's really, really good. One of the classic Season 3 episodes. Maybe try and squeeze it into my schedule this week so I have it in the bag. There goes the buffer concept again. Cheers for now.